For women, over the course of about a month, I'm changing. Who we are early on in our follicular phase is very different than who we are the week before our period. Why not leverage the gifts we've been given to make our lives easier?
I want to have a different conversation. I want to really surround myself with positive conversations as it relates to aging.
A lot of us just never had education around our hormones and our cycles. For a lot of us, this is new. For women listening who maybe are still in corporate, great time to ask for a raise. Go in with your ovulation energy. You're going to feel the confidence other people are going to be.
Money. You know, I get so excited to text you around event time and I'm like, guess who's ovulating? What would you say are the 3 most underrated and free wellness tools or practices that can dramatically improve our performance?
Yeah. Number 1.
Today, we're going to talk about why, for women, biohacking is kind of on its way out, and biological living according to our unique biology as women, is in. And I have my friend, Dr. Laura DeCesaris, here to dive into all the things: cycle tracking, how to optimize your cycle for performance in your business, which wellness and biohacking trends are in and out, and which she would pass and smash. We dive into so many really tangible, really practical ways for you to not just feel great, but actually thrive in your business, in your relationships, and understand that the way your body is designed is perfect. It's just us learning how to work with it. So you're going to love this one, especially if you're someone who wants to feel really good this year. You have health goals. You really want to optimize your well-being. This is the episode for you. Laura DeCesaris, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
Whenever I'm talking to my actual friends, it feels so weird to use someone's first and last name.
Sounds weird.
But I want everyone to know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm so excited to have you back and to talk a lot about things that I'm definitely in a season of curiosity about. How do I optimize my health, especially as I enter my 40s? How do I know which biohacking trends are a fit for me as an ambitious woman, someone with the biology that I have? So we're going to talk about how we kind of are feeling like biohacking for women is out. There's more this trend toward biological living according to our biology. And you're an expert in that. You are not only a functional medicine trained doctor for high performing women, you are my functional medicine trained doctor, and someone who I've really worked with over the last several years, especially around my high performance seasons, things like events. We've created protocols to make sure that I not just feel my best on that day, but I feel great going in and feel great coming out of it. So lots we're going to get into today. I'm so excited.
I'm excited. And I love that phrase, biological living. That just feels really good.
Yeah.
In your body to hear it. Oh.
I read it on the internet.
Yeah.
It's where the source of all wisdom. Okay. So I want to just dive right in because you do work with primarily very high driven, high achieving women.
Yes.
What are some of the most common health struggles that you see show up in women who are basically us?
Our own issues, of course.
Yes.
There's a few things. And I think an important just like disclaimer for that conversation is, again, when we're talking about very driven, high performing women who are go-getters and get after it the way that we often do, we're putting a higher demand on our bodies. But yet we're following health advice that's really telling us to do the bare minimum, that like if you weren't doing any of this stuff, you might be okay. But when day in and day out, you're putting so much added stress on your body, and not necessarily in a bad way, we have to look at, okay, well, doesn't it make sense then that we need to find ways to increase the supply to meet that demand? If not, that's when we start to see health issues start to crop up. And really what I see a lot of is hormonal issues stemming just from, again, going and not really understanding the seasonality of our bodies as women. When do we pull back and rest? When is it time to push ourselves a little bit more? Maybe the same routine every day in our cycle is actually not ideal. Maybe we need to switch it up a little bit. Because when we're not doing that, we can kind of start to get these hormonal cascades changing. And whether you want to call it burnout or, whether it's showing up as PMS or perimenopause symptoms, I think the severity of those have to go with like, how are we taking care of ourselves in these busy, pushing, go seasons? And sometimes it even just looks like, hey, I feel tired and I'm just not as sharp as I used to be. Mm-hmm. And every time I put on this event or I have this big long day of podcasting, like I get sick afterwards. Like that always makes me sad when I see women do like crush these big events. And then the next week they're like, coming at you from the couch, I'm so sick. I'm like, oh, it doesn't have to be that way if you know how to support yourself when you're in that season.
Yeah. Okay. So since we're on that topic, for women who have these seasons where they're very on, whether it's in their business, whether it's in another area of their life, how do we really buffer to allow ourselves to show up in those moments and transition out of that moment? That's a lot of the work that we've done, is how do we make sure Lindsay feels her best the day after the event? How do we set ourselves up for success for life's high demand moments?
Yes. And I think to answer this question, we have to go back to kind of what is the foundation of high performance living for women, of this biological living. And that is understanding your body and reconnecting to it. And a lot of us can have this tendency to get a little disconnected from our body and our health when we're in these big seasons. We kind of put on the autopilot mode. We're like, hey, I just got to get done. And we're not really paying attention to, well, where am I at hormonally right now? Like, if I know I'm at a certain phase of my cycle and I have a lot of demand on myself, either maybe I can schedule around that, maybe I can ask for help and take things off my plate, or maybe I understand, hey, this is not the prime hormonal time for this big thing on my calendar, but I know exactly what's happening in my body, and now I know exactly how to take care of myself with that hormonal profile. And I understand if this is like your first foray into cycle tracking, you're probably like, that sounds like a lot of work, because it is learning something new.
Yes.
And I think that's a big thing to consider, is that a lot of us just never had education around our hormones and our cycles. I mean, even like with all of the education I've done, I can think of maybe like a day here or there with like one picture of the menstrual cycle and like off you go. And, I think girls who are growing up now, who are teens, who are in college, they're so much more aware of these things because they're being taught it early, and their life trajectory is going to look very different, which I think is great. But for a lot of us, this is new. We have to learn how to pay attention to these things and understand we're not crazy. We're not overly emotional. We're just literally not living in alignment with what's happening in our bodies on a biological level sometimes. And once you start to understand that, then you can put these routines, this way of caring for yourself around these pushing seasons, around these events better, because it's really going to depend on where you're at. I mean, in an ideal world, every time we'd step on stage, we'd be in like our ovulation phase, right? Like,
which, I get so excited to text you around event time, and I'm like, guess who's ovulating? And not for fertility reasons, just because
you feel so
I'll be extra shiny.
Yeah. Glowy. Like, when a woman's ovulating, you're like, what is she on? Like, I want some of that. She's ovulating. She has that hormonal rush.
Yes.
And if you can start to understand that patterning, you also know when you stop ovulating, which I think is really key for a lot of women in perimenopause, when that starts to change. Or if there's a problem happening, that even if you're not trying to get pregnant, right? Like, okay, this isn't happening. So what did I miss? What did I miss last month? Like, what am I not getting? Am I not eating enough? Am I missing, certain types of foods in my diet? Did I forget to do recovery time and just like pushed a little too hard in life? Mm-hmm. Do I need like more sleep? So, using that ovulation is kind of like your vital sign for women of, is everything happening hormonally the way it's supposed to? And if not, where do I need to adjust things to make sure that that continues to happen? And I actually have these hormonal surges that I need to continue to feel good day in and day out throughout your cycle.
And we're going to go into the nuances of the different phases of our cycle and how to align those with, just the way we show up in the world. But I think it would actually help to step back and explain. I'm like laughing because I'm like, explain the difference between men and women, Laura. This could be
could be here a while.
A whole series. No, but from a biological standpoint, what I want to preface is my understanding, and you tell me if this is correct, is a lot of the research, a lot of even just like health guidance was based on studies done only on men. So it wasn't taking a woman's cyclical nature into account. It was basing it on a men's cyclical nature, which theirs is 24 hours and ours is 20, however many days your cycle is. You're the doctor. I'll let you say the words.
No, this is good. I'm seeing how much you've learned during our time together. So I like
exactly.
this.
Like this is me proving that I listen when you talk.
I swear I listen. Great. Yeah. So that is a great place to start. And going back to the research, you're right. It's only more recently that they're actually starting to study menstruating women in cycles in studies. For a long time, it was either no women at all, or they would look at postmenopausal women because they have a much more predictable hormone profile because they're not cycling every month anymore. Whereas women with a menstrual cycle, it's so many variables because depending on where they're at, it changes. So they're not always included. And so when we look at health advice out there for nutrition, for supplements, for whatever that is, this is why it's really important, I think, for everyone, if you're going to be researching this, like, hey, let's look at who the studies were on. Because if you're trying to take a supplement that's only been studied in, I don't know, white men ages 20 to 40, like it might not be for you. Like, and for women, we have to probably adjust things. We tend to be smaller frame than a lot of men. So dosage stuff doesn't always line up. So the research piece is big. I think it's finally changing, but that's more recent. So 10 years from now it might be a different story.
Sure.
But right now we are limited in kind of what we have. So you have to consider that as a menstruating woman that, okay, well, is this applicable to me? Is it safe enough at least for me to just try it and see how I feel, be curious about it? If there's not studies yet, doesn't mean that there won't be eventually.
Sure.
And so now going to the difference between men and women. So yeah, men really, they're driven by what's called our circadian rhythm. And we have one too. It's our 24-hour rhythm, kind of just how we exist day to day. It has to do with making cortisol throughout the day, which cortisol kind of gets a bad rep as a stress hormone, but we really need it. Like we want it in the morning to feel awake and energized. And then melatonin, our sleep hormone, is kind of the opposite of that. And those two things govern this rhythm. And with men, all of their other hormones, they also have different pulses of them in this 24-hour cycle. So they're kind of the same creature day in and day out. Whereas for women, if we'll use like 28 days for an average menstrual cycle length, like we're a different person every day. And like who we are early on in our follicular phase is very different than who we are the week before our period. On a biochemistry level, our hormones are different. Our brain chemistry is different. Our ability to handle stress, the quality of our nervous system is different. So looking at that, and then as we start to bring in, well, how can we look at our nutrition and our lifestyle and even our supplementation and our biohacking tools? How can we kind of map those across this cycle, knowing what we know about what is going on with a woman's body during each phase? So it is a little more complex because instead of looking at things day in and day out, we kind of have to zoom out and say over the course of about a month, like I'm changing. And so I may need to change some of these things accordingly if what I'm doing isn't making me feel good, if I continue to have health issues, if I'm struggling with, insert whatever goal you're going after here. So I think considering that and taking a season to learn about that, it ends up making things a lot easier. So a little bit of a learning curve, but then you understand exactly why you feel the way you do. And why some days it's so easy to go to the gym and other days you're like, why am I crying under the barbell today? Like, why is this happening? Oh, it's day 27, right? Like,
yes.
Okay, we're working some things out here. Even just, as women who are entrepreneurs, who are doing business planning, like, why not leverage the gifts we've been given to make our lives easier, right? Like there's times in our cycle that our brain chemistry is more primed for different intellectual pursuits, for creative work, for admin work, for other things. So it ends up just making it much more easy to live in alignment with like who we are at our core, which is why I love that phrase, biological living. Yes, this is actually how we're supposed to live. We don't have to do it like men do because we're not wired quite the same. Doesn't mean we can't use the same tools.
Yes.
Just have to use them a little differently.
Sure. Before we jump into breaking down the phases and how we can really align those with the way we're working, does this apply to a woman who's not having a regular cycle? How does that I don't want her to tune out when we go into this. How would she modify this if she's not cycling regularly? Either she's past menopause or just for other reasons doesn't have a regular cycle.
Yeah, so a couple different things to consider. So does she not have a regular cycle because that's just something that is going on? Maybe she's in perimenopause. Maybe there's some other underlying health concern that's causing that, in which case you can still use these tools and you can actually use them to help regulate it, I would argue, depending on what the underlying cause is. We also have like, okay, maybe you're on birth control. And I think that's an important conversation of like what happens there. I think it's everyone's choice how they want to look at this, but really how hormonal birth control works is it disconnects brain from body. So you're not getting the signaling from brain to ovaries to make these hormones. So you don't have the same hormone patterns. Because essentially what those synthetic hormones do is like shut off our body's regular production of them. So you just don't get quite the same flux throughout the course of a cycle as you would as someone who's not on birth control or who's on like a non-hormonal form of it. And then we get to the point, well, what about when women stop cycling? Now we have postmenopausal women, if they're listening. Totally different ball game. That's like bonus version of us now that we have to learn a different way to do all of this, right? Because there are still some hormones. Like it's a very low amount, but it's still happening. And there's other glands coming in to help take over that. So like adrenal function, which is what helps govern our stress response, that becomes even more important for women in menopause and postmenopause, because that is doing a little bit of hormone production. And then, I mean, you know, there's women taking HRT and now, okay, well, take hormone replacement therapy and I can pulse it to recreate some of these patterns. So it's such a nuanced conversation depending on what scenario is yours. But when we talk about understanding like, who am I hormonally right now? Okay, this is where I'm at. This is my baseline. How do I use these different tools to help me? Even if it doesn't look the same way as my sister or my friend or, you know, Susie down the street, I can still use them to support my unique situation when I look at it as a whole.
Makes so much sense. Okay, so then let's dive into this, and I'll have you answer it from two different angles. I want to go through each of the phases of our cycle because you equipped me with some very practical health advice for what things to prioritize and what things, like how to work out during certain phases of my cycle versus not. And then we'll bring it back to business and how to work with those creative surges that we can find. But from a health perspective, what are some important things for women to know about how to optimize their cycle and their overall well-being?
Yeah. Do we want to go through this phase by phase?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, just in case people don't know what the phases are, let's start there. Start there. So day one of your cycle is the day you get your period, your first bleed day. That's day one. For most women, that's going to be around 3 to 5 days, maybe up to 7 days is considered normal in terms of bleed length. So it changes a little bit for every woman. And really what we have to understand is at the beginning of that, like your hormones have dropped out. They have taken your brain chemistry with them. So things like serotonin and dopamine that have these relationships with estrogen, with sex hormones, those also dip, which is kind of why in that like premenstrual phase, the first few days of your period, a lot of women can feel tired, not super social, just like not super motivated, maybe even just like a little weepy, or they need alone time. And it's really understanding like, okay, yes, hormones have changed, but it's really taken our brain chemistry with them for a couple of days. So in my mind, it's just like this great time. Like we're literally wired to just kind of go internal here. Like women are also very highly intuitive in this stage. So it's like a really great time for just sitting in, reflecting on like, how are things going? What do I need to do? How am I feeling? What do I need? Versus like overscheduling yourself in those days when you're really like running on fumes in terms of hormones and brain chemistry. We don't want that. It doesn't mean that you can't do things. Like women have been functioning on their periods forever. Like we're not saying that you have to like stay inside in the dark in a blanket all day long. You could if you want to.
Also, that sounds lovely.
Sounds right. It sounds super cozy. But it's understanding that like maybe that's not the best time to like go hard in the gym. Like maybe that's not the day you go for a PR if you're weightlifting. Maybe that's not the day you do like a double workout at Body or wherever you're going. Just maybe I just need a walk. Maybe I need to like phone a friend, have like some girl time, whatever feels good. So, you know, it's just starting to understand that that's happening and creating some space for yourself to check in, see what you need that day, and like practicing that presence instead of autopiloting your way through it. I think that's really, really key. So after that phase, we then move into what's called the follicular phase. And this is really happening pretty much from the time you get your period up until ovulation. It's a longer phase. Most women usually know sometime around like day 3 or day 4, they're like, I'm back
That's
in my body.
It feels.
And it's like the hormones are coming back in, estrogen's being produced again, we have serotonin again. And most women, if there's not any underlying health things going on, they usually feel really good in this phase. We're very resilient in this phase, where we tend to be a little more primed to handle stress in this phase. Estrogen can get a bad rap sometimes, but it's really a great hormone in terms of how it impacts these other systems. Really helps with our brain chemistry in terms of big picture planning and creative pursuits, and gets us feeling social again. So follicular phase to me is a time that like you really can do whatever you want. You want to push yourself. You have like big goals, working out. You want to like load your schedule up. You want to try some new things, maybe try some new biohacks. Like, this would be the time to do it. You're just a little more resilient when you have that hormonal protection happening. And we pretty much have that right up until the time that we ovulate. And a lot of things that you read online will be like, oh, you ovulate day 14. Well, not necessarily. Again, the power of tracking your cycle and understanding what your body does when you ovulate. For some women, this may be earlier. Maybe it's day 10 or 11. For other women, maybe it's day 18 or 19. Like, there's a lot of variability there, but it's a fairly short window. And usually if you're ovulating, you know, once you're checking in with your body, body temperature's going up, you're feeling a little spicy, feeling good about yourself, like really social, you have the glow, and it's a great couple of days. You also have a lot of hormones surging right now. So a lot of stuff going on, but again, still feeling pretty strong, still feeling pretty good. I always tell my entrepreneur clients, like, if you have speaking, if you have events, if you have networking, if you're doing podcasts, like, and you have the ability to book it during this time, women can just be really magnetic during their ovulation phase. So you might as well take advantage of that. Because then after ovulation, we head into what's called the luteal phase. We're going to be there right up until the start of our next period. So on average, it lasts about 2 weeks. Could be as short as like 10 days, just depends on the woman. And what should happen here is dependent on ovulation. So if you ovulate, it then gives signals to your body to make progesterone, which is our other main sex hormone. And progesterone actually has a very like calming anti-anxiety effect. It's really good for us. It helps us with sleep. It helps with memory retention. But if we don't ovulate, we don't get the signals to make it, which is why I'm really passionate about women tracking their ovulation, even if they're not trying to get pregnant, because you need to know if you even have the ability to make progesterone or not. And that's really, when we talked about birth control, that's kind of what happens. They cut off that signal so that you don't ovulate, and then you don't make progesterone. So obviously you're not going to get pregnant. But you also don't get the benefits of progesterone that way, which we want. And so this phase, I find, can be the phase where a lot of women can experience symptoms related to their cycle, especially if they're not making progesterone. Maybe they get PMS, feel tired, just like don't quite feel right, and feel a little puffy and inflamed if there's an imbalance between some of these sex hormones. But if you are getting the right hormones produced in good amounts, and you're really taking care of yourself to be able to do that, it's a great time of the cycle for like other types of things to do. Like, you can still work out. I see a lot of information out on the internet about like cycle tracking your workouts, and they're like, no workouts in the luteal phase, like walks only.
That's like 2 weeks.
It is like, how are you
supposed
to hit your goals if you're not working out 2 weeks out of the month? So I think that's been disproved enough that I don't like still seeing it out there. But I do think what's true is that some women do need more recovery time in this phase. So if you're putting in the workouts, you just might not be able to do them like back to back. You might really need to make sure you're prioritizing your nutrition, your recovery modalities, so that you don't feel more tired, so that you don't kind of burn yourself out.
Yeah.
Like, we're not quite as resilient to stress in the luteal phase. We're a little more what's called sympathetic dominant. So we can kind of get a little stressed out a little more easily. So we want to consider that. But, going back to when we talk about some of these tools more, just understanding these differences in the cycle, to me, it can also help guide you like, well, how am I going to do these things in different parts? If I know there's phases when I'm more resilient, when I'm less resilient, if I'm more prone to, getting tired or not, well, how can I use the tools in a way that matches what's happening a little bit better?
Yeah, it took me a little while to understand it. I've started tracking. I use the Aura Ring to track. Sponsor us, please. But I wouldn't say that I know much more than just the very basics, but it's helped me to pause and listen to how I feel. If you forget everything that Laura just shared, listen to how you feel, how your body feels in each phase, day to day, and it'll give you a lot of information about how that's going and what you feel up for. So now you touched on a little bit of how this translates into business, but let's make it really practical. It sounds like, so menstruation is permission to troll mode.
Permission to troll mode.
Needed.
100%.
We will ship you a sweatshirt. So, and I loved the part about that our intuition is heightened during that phase. Because yes, well, depending on how your experience during that phase is, it might not feel the most comfortable. I don't necessarily feel my best during that time. I don't feel awful because, again, I've been working with you and working on balancing hormones, but it isn't my shiniest time. Remembering that there's a purpose to it. It's taking me more inward. It's making me want to pull back a little bit. And that is a perfect time to reflect on, how have my goals been going? How do my relationships feel? And that's not something I was in the practice of doing. I think it's that monthly reminder to check in with myself. What else can we be using that time for, specifically as entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you really think about it, you think back to your experience around menstruation and you're like, how do I know if I'm more intuitive? Like, what comes up for you? Like, a lot of women will start to think about, hey, this thing really stresses me out right now and I can ignore it the rest of the time and not right now. Well, why not right now? Like, what is that trying to tell you? Like, what does that mean that this is the time that keeps coming up? Like, could it be your body trying to get you to just pause and be present and think about that a little bit more right now? So
that's interesting. Instead of overriding it and be like, oh, I'm hormonal, I'm too much.
Right. No,
Such a reframe.
Right. Because you're never too much. Like,
yeah.
We always have thoughts and emotions and feelings for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think it's no coincidence that seems to be a time when they're amplified and they're coming up and the brain's like, hey, pay attention to me. Let's take some time and figure this out while we're in troll mode, while we're in downtime.
Yes.
So, translating that to, well, what can this mean for your business, right? Is this a time that you can set aside every month to think about this? Like, hey, how did things go last month? What do I need to change moving forward? Does this still feel good for me? Does this still feel aligned for me? Like, what is literally my gut feeling about what's happening right now? I think that's the great time to tap into that and do your self-checks in terms of business.
Such a great reminder, even just monthly, to do those self-checks. Okay, then we transition into the follicular phase. Look at me learning. I couldn't have told you the order of them before. But this sounds like it is a time that's geared for action. What else can we really be mindful of once we feel that surge of hormones? Like, we feel kind of like, oh, okay, I'm back. For me, it is about day 3.
A couple of things to think about. So I think especially if you're someone who's doing your service provider, you're doing a lot of like client facing work, this is the great time to block more of your calls, your networking, that sort of stuff. You're primed to enjoy it more. Like, we'll get to this later, but like, nothing's worse than putting things on your social calendar while you're in follicular phase and then realizing, this is like
getting around to
for day
27.
Phase. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. So you actually want to do it during that phase, and you're naturally more engaged with people. And then when we look at some of the impacts of estrogen on the brain, we also know that it really helps us with, again, big picture planning, with creative pursuits. We're better at creating an output during this phase. So for people that are creating their own content, like, this would be a great time to plan your content, to maybe even like, start getting ready to like film your stuff while you're feeling really good versus waiting till later in your cycle when like maybe you don't want to dress up and show up the way you need to. And just looking at bigger picture plans in your business. I think women really are like leadership abilities come out a lot in this phase too. So if you're running a team, like team meetings during this time, having those sort of conversations, timing it to that versus just, we're going to do this the first Tuesday of every month. Well, no, let me map it to this instead when I'm really primed to like be at my best for these sorts of tasks.
And I have found, I can speak from being a woman-owned company with a team of 2 women, you start to sync up. So it makes planning these things a little easier. Okay, so then we get to ovulation. This is the time where you do feel more magnetic. I always do get excited when my cycle aligns with being on stage or being at an event. Not that I can't show up even if I'm day 1.
Right.
I just feel the difference. So if you can plan it, if you can kind of look at that window of when you might kind of be in that phase, you're just going to be extra shiny.
Right.
Right.
Right. Or even like doing things like you're doing now. Like, hey, 2 or 3 days out of the month, I do live podcast recordings all day long. Like, well, can I try and get it there as much as possible?
Yeah.
And I have the capacity for that. I feel really good during that time, and it just makes everything flow much smoother. For women listening who maybe are still in corporate, kind of moving up that ladder, great time to ask for a raise. Like, go in with your ovulation energy. Great time to do it.
Hey,
you're going to feel the confidence. Other people are going to be
money.
Other people are going to be more magnetized to you. So like, again, use what you have and do it. Like, you'll feel so much more confident with that. I also think this is a great time for people who are like filming their own content at home. Like if you are looking for a day to like block film content, you're going to want to dress up and like look good and look nice when you're ovulating. So again, make it easier. Like take away the resistance wherever you can and showing up in our businesses by aligning it with these things.
Mm-hmm. Then we shift into the luteal phase, all the way taking us up to, which that's actually the phase that I'm in as I'm filming this, because I didn't really have a choice other than to schedule it during these 2 days. So again, you can show up, you can still do the thing that you want to. Now everyone knows my cycle. It's about 24 days, everybody. So now you can track it. And what ideally is this time used for if we can plan around it?
Yeah. So we talked before about progesterone during this phase, and progesterone also we have receptors for progesterone on the brain too, and it just does things a little differently than estrogen. We still have estrogen during this phase too, so we're not like invalids. We can still show up and do things. But I do find that the luteal phase can be kind of like your get shit done phase in terms of following through on all those plans you set for yourself, in terms of following the steps and actually doing the work. This is a really good time to get that done. Also, because progesterone can help with our sleep and it can help with memory formation and consolidation, it's a great time to learn. So if you're doing continuing ed, if you're tuning into podcasts to learn about things, doing that in this phase and taking advantage of that impact of progesterone on the brain can really help with just actually retaining that information a little bit better. I also like to do things like my admin days I'll do in luteal phase, like money days I'll do in luteal phase, things that don't require quite as much creative output, but I still like there's still tasks to be done, but it's kind of just like following my itemized to-dos that I made earlier versus trying to force myself to do a kind of work that I'm really just not as primed to do in that phase.
It's so helpful, and it's such permission, because if I tune into how I actually feel and the kind of work I'm drawn toward, it does tend to mirror that.
Yeah.
So we kind of started off this conversation talking about how biohacking in the conventional way is kind of out, not totally, but we just want to transition it more to this idea of biological living. I wanted to play a little game of smash or pass.
Okay.
And I just want to know, because you were seeing all the things out there. I mean, you probably see 10 times the number that I do. And I just am really curious how many of these pass for someone who knows their shit when it comes to which of these is a smash or pass for a high achieving woman. So we already talked about wearable technology, smash or pass.
Smash, especially with some new companies coming up that are founded by women, specifically with women-centric technologies. There's like a new brand called Incora Health coming out that's actually wearable earrings. Yes, so completely designed just with like females in mind with the algorithm, whereas the other wearables are still catching up with adding women into the algorithm.
They're ugly also. Let's just say it's very clear they're not designed by women.
Right. But smash for sure. Because in my mind, like, especially if you're in this phase where you're looking into health optimization, like you can't optimize what you're not tracking, what you don't know.
Agreed. And only because you taught me that. Okay. Red light therapy.
Smash. Probably my favorite tool.
I told you I came up with this idea this morning while sitting in front of my red light.
So clearly that's a smash for you.
Well, again, only because you told me so. Cold plunges.
Time-specific smash.
Okay, please explain.
I think cold plunging, again, what's the intention behind it? So we talked about follicular phase, how women are a little more resilient to stress. Like if you're looking to build resilience and use cold plunge as a tool to do that, smash it in the follicular phase.
Okay.
Don't like force yourself to do it in the luteal phase, unless it like feels good for you, but you're not going to get the stress building benefits there.
Yeah, I'm just going to go with pass all around for me on the cold anything.
Nobody loves jumping. Anyone who says they love going into cold water is lying. Let's be honest. Like,
or a sociopath. We're not sure. Okay. What this whole castor oil in the belly button thing, smash or pass?
Pass. Hard pass.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do it.
I mean, that's
if you want to use castor oil pack, put it over your liver, wear the thing, but not in your belly button.
Okay.
No.
You heard it here, folks. Mouth taping. This is the other one.
Smash.
How many things are we taping? Well, I guess we can eliminate the belly button.
We're just going to sleep with things taped all over us at this point.
I know. Well, I'm doing like the natural route. No Botox. So I've got like tape, but I'm just a vision.
Yeah.
Mouth
I got
taping.
my sleep mask, my mouth tape, like nasal breathing. It's a scene at night. It's lovely.
But mouth taping is a smash. Do you want to explain a little bit why? Because this is something else I'm seeing everywhere.
Yeah. So a lot of it just has to do with how people breathe, nasally versus mouth breathing. Mouth breathing, we know, is just not great for oral hygiene. It's also just not great for like myofascial development. It actually does come with like higher health risks in general. So what mouth tape does is forces you to breathe through your nose. It literally is reteaching you how to nasally breathe, which should be the way we're breathing most of the time. So, if you have sleep apnea, if you have an issue, please don't go start mouth taping. Just don't do that.
This is a disclaimer. This is not medical advice.
But, trying it at night or I've seen people do it like even working out just to teach themselves to nasally breathe while working out. It's a smash for me.
Smash. Okay. For dating, we're not so sure, but we'll see.
Maybe not on the first date.
Well, I mean, since we're on this topic.
I mean, maybe. We put it all out there.
You and I have had, this is just such a cool friendship. We've gotten to really watch each other evolve. I mean, the woman sitting in front of me, and you would probably say the same, completely different than the woman I first met in 2020. 100%. And, as we've grown, I've just really watched you evolve into just this confident, like, sexier, like you're just, there is an aura. It's like you're always ovulating. There's just like this magnetism to you. So it's no surprise that on our walk the other day, you were like, I think I met, like this really great person, but we were laughing because you were like, I've never been like, had the experience of dating someone who shares my appreciation for health and biohacking and all the things. So he's probably cool with mouth taping. That probably is
for sure. Biohacker boyfriend is cool with mouth taping. Yeah.
We said, this is my challenge for Laura, to start a series on her Instagram, Biohacker Boyfriend, because she's like, yeah, he sent me home with a water filter, like this really high-end water filter. Supplements. The other day, here, a lot of presents.
Fruits. It's great. Like protein.
Fresh meat.
Now he's going to be listening and know I call him Biohacker Boyfriend behind his back. Sorry.
Well, it's like, it kind of sticks. I like it. Okay, so let's kind of start to bring this together, because I want to leave people with very actionable, tangible things that they can start to implement right now just to feel better. The women of this community, you've been such a big part of it for years. That these are women who are really exist on this planet to make a big difference. So we want to equip them to feel great while doing it. So what would you say are the 3 most underrated and free wellness tools or practices that can dramatically improve our performance?
Number 1, track your cycle. Just do it. It's free. It's your body. No one is going to know your body better than you. You are the expert of your own health. And you have to start connecting to what's going on with it if you want to optimize, if you want to understand and know if something is not going the way you want. So tapping into that awareness, even if it feels like one more to do initially, I promise it will make your life so much easier in the long run. So that's number 1. Number 2, I would say get outside more. And I know we're in Arizona, so we're a little biased, but I think a lot of us can get stuck in, I'm behind the computer for 12 days and then I'm rushing to pick up kids or go to a meeting or do something else. And we're like, did I get outside today for more than walking from my house to the car? We weren't made as humans to be inside all day. We need the sun, we need the fresh air, we need the movement. So if nothing else, start working that into your day as frequently as you can. Your circadian rhythm, your infradian rhythm, all of those things will be helped by it. And you will feel so much better. There's running jokes on social media that was oh, my grandma had it right when she told me just to go outside and drink a glass of water. Well, she did. That's literally what most of us need, is to go outside and be in the sun and drink a glass of water. Just do it.
Pause this podcast right now. Go outside and drink a glass of water.
Send us your photos. It'll be fine. Accountability check. So track your cycle, get outside more. And the third that I would say, and people might not think of this as directly related to health, but the more that I work with people and the more that I study why women have higher rates of chronic illness and stress and burnout, seriously audit the people in your life who are around you. Ooh. Because I think when we look at whether you're trying to achieve a health goal, whether you're trying to keep up healthy habits, whether you're trying to grow as a person, whatever that looks like, the relationships you have and the people around you are going to impact that so much more than any diet, any pill, any biohack, or anything else. Like, community is the ultimate biohack, like, especially for women. Like, we thrive in communities, but sometimes looking at relationships, and this is the hard part I think that people don't talk about, is like, some of them were meant to get us to a point, and I don't just mean romantic relationships, could be friendships, could be professional relationships, but they're not meant to come with us and they're not serving us anymore. And you don't have to like cut people off, but you can just acknowledge like, hey, we're just growing in different directions. I need to find some people that support where I'm at and where I'm going next. Because it's really hard to change your life, to change your health when you're in those same environments with the same people who are not going with you anymore. And it impacts your health and well-being a lot more than I think people think. Again, we get like hyper-focused on the diets and macro tracking, and it's the consumption of other things, right? Other people's energy, other conversations that you're having, negativity. So really like auditing that is probably the hardest, but also like the best thing you can do. And like, it is free. It's not easy, but it's free.
Like,
you don't have to pay to do that.
Do you think we could get people's health insurance to pay for their ticket to Powerhouse Women?
That would be amazing. Maybe their HSA or Flex account.
Exactly. At least HSA. I know. Like, no, this is great for my microbiome. This is great for my mental health.
It's great for our brain chemistry.
It's so true. And that's something, you know, we have talked about before. I love when you talk about that. Just the power of female friendships and community on our actual brain chemistry. So go just a little bit deeper into this, because like we're saying, it's like a lot of these things are free and we know they impact us, but I don't think we often make the correlation to how they are literally tied to our well-being and our physical ability to thrive.
Absolutely. And I would argue that any woman listening right now, if she had a friend or an entrepreneur friend or a sister or a daughter who needed her to like pour into them, like they needed to be lifted up, she needed to speak goodness into them, she would be like, hell yes, I want that opportunity. Like, I love supporting my friends.
Yeah.
But as women, we have a really hard time receiving that. A lot of us do. But here's the beautiful thing. So like you and I sitting here right now, like we're looking at each other and I'm saying, Lindsay, this podcast that you've put together, this community that you put together is so special. And it's been so instrumental in my growth as a person and in the growth of all of these women listening. And to witness your growth has been just a thing of beauty. And I'm just so happy to know you and be in your life and have you in my life. So thank you for that. A couple of things just happened. Your brain just started making oxytocin. So did mine. Our cortisol is lowering. We're making serotonin. So we're literally impacting each other's brain chemistry by doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the magic of these big events like Powerhouse Women. Like you say a lot, like you can't explain how it feels until you're there, because that's what you've curated and that's what's happening right now. And so it's more than women showing up just to, oh, I'm going to learn something for my business. Like they do, but what happens is they connect with the other women on this deep level. And so many of us don't have that in our day-to-day life. So you have to put yourself in spaces and be around people who will give that to you, because you're giving a gift to the other person and to yourself at the same time, which is pretty cool when you think about it.
And that's such a great point to really end on, is the reminder that the other person who's giving, whether it's those words of encouragement, I think just hyping each other up as women is like such an underrated way we can support one another, is if we're not willing to receive that, we also rob them of their oxytocin boost.
Absolutely.
And I have struggled to receive. We've had many conversations about that. I have conversations with so many women. And it's just such a reminder. I think this brings it back to such a practical level. Every single time I get to have a conversation with you, whether it's going over my blood work annually or just the way that you check in, you're so intentional with checking in event season, like, hey, just making sure you're drinking water and eating. But things like that are so important. And the work that you're doing is so important, because I don't resonate with a lot of the traditional overriding health advice. You and I were talking about this on a walk too. I don't think I am the typical 41-year-old female.
Sure.
And I really want to optimize. I want to have a different conversation. I want to really surround myself with positive conversations as it relates to aging. And it's just been so empowering through the work we've done together to get to know my unique biology. So for people who want to understand the way you work with clients, you have all different options. You have some incredible resources available. Where's the best place for them to connect with you?
Yeah, probably Instagram. It's always me in my DMs, or my website, drlaura.DeCesaris.com. And I do have a bioharmony guide that I will gift to your audience. You can just use the code Powerhouse and you can just get access to that for free. And
we'll make sure to link that if I don't already have the link.
Yeah. And it goes into some of the how-to around this for those of you who are listening and you're like, that's good and great, but I still need to know what to do. Mm-hmm. So I'll talk you through, okay, well, this is how it actually happens. And this is why we're doing it. Yeah. So bringing just more intentionality to that space of, it's not about cold plunging 11 minutes every week. It's, hey, if this is a good tool for me, here's when it might feel the best. And here's some different ways I can look at it. Like, you want to talk about receiving, like cold plunge is the ultimate. Just let me release any control and just be receptive of the experience. Right. And so you can use them in a lot of different ways.
Anything else you want to share just about, well, here, I'm like, you're writing a book finally.
You're writing a book.
Like, do we say this? Because now you're accountable.
It's good. I need that accountability. I need that check.
And this is what people say. They think they want to be my friend, but I'm like, it comes with a very high level of accountability. It's not a casual walk. It's a, what are we both committed to and what are we doing about it? I'm so excited to watch the work that you're doing continue to unfold, and we'll link your Instagram, make sure everybody knows where to find you. I feel like this is probably another little bonus oxytocin boost that we'll end with, which is your powerhouse moment, a moment you just want to pause and celebrate yourself for. Anything big or small that you realize maybe you just didn't take the moment in that moment to stop and acknowledge it. But when I ask, what's a recent powerhouse moment that you want to celebrate right now with us, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Wow, that is a good one. Actually, the book is the first thing. That is the first thing that comes to mind. Because for me, that's just such a big step at like really putting like myself and my thoughts and my ideas out there for other people to engage in these conversations. And it feels a little bit vulnerable, but I'm also really proud of myself for being like, we're doing it. Yeah. I had to literally sign up for a retreat for a week to make sure I gave myself a deadline to do it, but we're going to do it. I'm really excited about that experience and proud that I'm giving myself the time and space to really dive into that.
I'm so excited. We'll have to come back when it's out so we can share it with everybody. Yeah. Thanks for being here, friend.
Thanks for having me.